like fish weaving smoothly through the chill river nearby, a train winds lazily through the Allegheny Mountain Valley of West Virginia. Leaves touched by fall frame a scene that could be a postcard from 100 years ago, as thick patches of oak, maple, and hickory follow the passengers for miles. The Potomac River, long before it reaches Washington and the Atlantic Ocean, is an almost constant companion. The train clatters comfortably along a track first laid about 100 years earlier. With its collection of 40-year-old diesel locomotives and coaches bought at auction and painstakingly rebuilt for a new life. On board, passengers pass through an almost pristine world where nature and wildlife far outnumber people. There is no real destination for this gentle giant. It simply transports you miles into the South Branch Valley to a distant bridge where peaceful rapids soothe your soul, and then returns you to where your journey began. It's a trip of nostalgia, of ambiance, of nature, and of the senses. The Potomac Eagle takes its name from the river and from the national bird. This is home for many bald eagles. Regularly, they snatch fish from the shallow waters and nest in a tall tree on the opposite bank. The eagles share their kingdom with another symbol of American pride and strength, the railroad. The Potomac Eagle train lies west of Washington, D.C. and southeast of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. And as the train carries passengers who sometimes travel great distances to take this ride, it carries with it the future of its hometown, Romney, West Virginia.
To me, it's the answer. I think people in Romney are, function on a slower pace. And I like that's why I'm still here. And the neat thing about the railroad is it provides a type of an economy for the area that does not have major manufacturing plants or anything like that to pollute what we have. And to me, that's very important.
The fact that the Potomac Eagle is running at all is a triumph of determination, insight, and of careful planning. All these factors combine quite literally to put the tracks under the train. Many people from Romney and elsewhere made it happen, but a few key players are critical to what you see. All have an abiding affection for trains. Engineer Dave Corbin.
The railroad run through our front yard, and had a grandmother that always made a point of seeing that I was awake to watch the passenger train come rolling through town with a steam engine and 2 or 3 cars, and I guess those earliest memories stick with you.
Engineer Dan Snyder.
We've got a easy railroad, a good railroad to go over here, and it's a river grade, and but it still takes maximum concentration to make your schedule. Comfort of the passengers is very important, and safety is the top importance.
Romney banker Walter Lehman.
Well, I think it's all started back around 1990. We had the local fire company had run an occasional excursion. We have a beautiful valley here with troughed area with bald eagles, all this available to us, and a lot of history in this town.
Walter Lehman and friends in the Romney Business and Professional Organization saw promise in this railroad, whose history began more than a century earlier, on the backs of construction crews gouging out a path for the tracks with not much more than the shirt on their backs. They used picks, shovels, wheelbarrows, dynamite, and their own strength to carve a niche in this valley and to lay the tracks that eventually would allow steam engines and cargo to run more than 25 miles between Romney and Green Spring. The trains carried both freight and passengers in those early days.
I said, now you start me out at Green Spring, which is here.
Frank Turley
And I said, "You
worked
take me
39 of
through
the early years on this
every
railroad.
spur and
His
every
father
siding
did the
and
same
every
for
pin
41.
stalk, everything on that.
They were among the many railroad men that helped build, maintain, and preserve this little piece of our American heritage.
Well, they were just average people, like my dad. My dad, he was a hunter and a fisherman, and I came right up behind him the same way. It was an endurance thing a lot of times, because sometimes you had trouble, you had long hours, and you went without sleep a long time, but then other times, it's like any other job, you had good times and bad times.
Conductors charged passengers just a few pennies a trip in those early days, as shown in this old fare booklet from the 1920s.
Well, let's say you go to McNeil, and that's 65 cents, or 69, whatever that is there. 69, I believe. It's so old it's hard to see. There's Sycamore, 65 cents. Now, that's where they're making their excursions now, from Romney to Sycamore, and had they ridden that in 1924, the fare would have been 65 cents one way.
Old photos of passengers waiting for the next train remind us of a simpler time, a time when people depended on trains as their chief form of transportation and communication with the outside world.
They hauled a lot of passengers because there wasn't too many automobiles in. Not everybody could afford one, and so therefore they rode the train.
The train out of Romney stopped carrying passengers on a regular basis in 1939 and hauled only freight. Then about 20 years ago, even the freight operation almost disappeared. The Baltimore and Ohio Railroad Company abandoned service. At that pivotal moment, the state of West Virginia did something almost unheard of. It stepped in and took over the freight operation, which to this day is the only state-owned and operated railroad in America. Clearly, had West Virginia not taken command, the people of this area would have lost their railroad in the 1970s and never would have seen the Potomac Eagle passenger train that followed 15 years later.
We wanted to retain the track and railroad operations for the future benefit, which has proved out to be probably one of the greatest industrial development investments the state's ever made.
Then, incredibly, the railroad almost disappeared again, for a totally different and frightening reason. In 1985, violent rains launched a wall of water that tore through the South Branch Valley at an estimated 100 miles an hour. Experts said it may have been the worst flood here in 500 years. While a few lives were lost, it devastated property and swamped the valley. Glenn Jones was there.
Just water with the tree tops showing. It was over top of the power poles. It went over the railroad tracks behind us here. There was nothing to see but water and a few treetops and logs, houses, camping trailers, house trailers, cattle, you name it. It was coming down the river.
Ann Parsons' 18th century house was caught in the flood's path. Her house was flooded with her in it.
I was upstairs in bed, and my sons come down and told me they wanted me to move out. And the water had never been in the brick part before. In fact, it had never been in the stone part. And I told them no, I was going to stay, and they kept insisting. Finally, they threatened to carry me out. So when I came down and started out the back door, the water was right there, which was very shocking to me, to say the least, because it had never been up in our yard.
The flood of '85 also swept away miles of the South Branch Valley Railroad, a railroad that West Virginia had worked so hard to save.
Major bridges taken out, trackage, miles of trackage through the trough area were just, the track and roadbed, everything just destroyed and had to be rebuilt.
Bridges were damaged or simply gone, rails missing or mangled beyond repair. Service was simply impossible. The state considered throwing in the towel. However, after taking into account how badly that would hurt this area economically, The state and federal government poured in millions of dollars to rebuild the line, and it was more than 2 years later before service resumed again. But now the freight trains were back, and even more successful than in recent history, hauling grain and supplies for a growing poultry industry. And as business picked up sharply, so did something else. Interest in carrying passengers, as was done 50 years earlier. Romney's fire department occasionally had leased cars for special passenger runs on the South Branch Valley tracks to help raise money for its department. People loved it. More trips followed. Romney business leaders saw future potential in this idea. So the question was raised, why not run passenger excursion trains on a regular basis? Romney invited Dave and Dan and Wayne to operate a scenic train business here on a seasonal basis. Until then, the men's Eagle Canyon Company had simply leased and operated renovated railroad cars to others to use for special excursions. They had never run a scenic railway here before, but something deep in their hearts told them they could. And in 1991, the Potomac Eagle ran its first passenger excursion train. The rest, as they say, is history.
Into the right, go up to the final seat. There's 3 more cars. St. Andrews to the left, please. Through the cars to the final seat.
Many of the Potomac Eagle employees are railroad veterans who had worked the rails for decades, retired, but couldn't quite get railroading out of their blood. Now they board sightseers for a trip of unspoiled beauty and adventure. Some passengers find far more than they bargained for. Not just a day away from work, not simply a new experience, but a journey into their own past.
All aboard!
Sitting in the dome car, a couple cuddles in the surrounding glow of the South Branch Valley and shares their feelings.
The gentle rocking, the quiet, you're a part of what's going on around you, but you're isolated from it.
Fall sprinkles its true colors as the Potomac Eagle glides through this mountain's wilderness and carves its way through falling leaves. An amateur photographer freezes the moment and savors his new memories.
Just the beauty of the leaves of the trees and just the train itself. It's I don't know, something about train travel and something about just the rocking motion, just the old time days. I don't know, nobody's in a rush to get anywhere.
Others record the occasion with their senses.
As a kid, I grew up going on train rides. My father and my grandfather worked for the B&O, and I could get a pass like every 3 months. And I went every time my grandparents went, and I think that's why I enjoy this so much. Because, and the first thing that came to me was when the conductor punched the ticket.
Conductor Tom Snodgrass rode the rails for more than 50 years, retired, and then returned to find a new home with the Potomac Eagle.
Well, I feel good because I feel as though I'm getting something accomplished when I come over here and help get this thing started. I've enjoyed watching it grow for the past 5 years. And, you know, it makes you feel useful instead of going home sitting in a rocking chair.
Unlike the enclosed dome car, here in an open coach, you can smell and feel the refreshing mountain air on your face.
The swaying motion is very relaxing. The noise is relaxing too, if you're not trying to talk.
A 2.5-year-old boy joins those in the wind and has an experience some will not have in their lifetime. Dad welcomes the moment.
Well, it's a good feeling. I mean, it brings back the old days when life was simple and just seemed to be more fun. The sound of the train, you can wave at the school buses, move slow, we hear the bells, and the rattling of the tracks, you know. It all brings back a time when life was simple.
See that eagle?
Dave Corbett's getting a feel for those who ride his train.
Great. Probably half of the passengers on our train every day have never been on a train. And, you know, it's just, it's a good feeling. It's a good feeling to be able to take them out there and to know the railroad and be able to share it with them, share the experience of a passenger train ride. And of course, our passenger train's lucky because we go through the fabulous West Virginia countryside. You know, you just, you know, it's almost heaven. You can't beat West Virginia.
Partner Dan Snyder is engineer for this trip.
Well, I've been pulling the throttle for about 20 years in freight service and stuff, and yes, you get quite exhilaration. I enjoy reporting to my regular freight operation too. On the former Baltimore to Ohio, I work for CSX through the week, and we operate the tourist excursion train here on the weekends. And no, it's different here. It's quite different. Our locomotives are different. We have more antique locomotives.
The Potomac Eagle also makes special nighttime dining runs. This night, Leadership West Virginia members socialize while the tiny kitchen hums in preparation for dinner.
It's very fun. I love it. Wouldn't trade it for anything. It's more of a challenge. You have to serve on a moving train and pouring coffee, and it's a little bit different than working in a diner.
As the train rolls into the slowly darkening valley, the guests seem to relax more with each passing minute.
I think one of the things I like is it's so slow. You can come in, you can stand here and feel the air and see the scenery and take your time, and it's probably closer to what the train rides used to be in our parents' day than what they are now. Amtrak, I mean, the commercial train systems now are wonderful. They get you there, but you don't have the experience. So this is great.
Maybe it's just kind of the quietness of everything. It's just, you know, the noise of the train on the tracks, and just kind of looking at the river just very quietly, and it's just taking it all in is really pretty amazing.
As darkness surrounds the train, supper is served.
This is only the second time I've ever been on a train, and it makes you just think back about how it was, you know, historically to be able to ride trains and eat and be served, and we just having a great time.
This is kind of like eating around a campfire. You know, you get out here in all the fresh air, and all of a sudden your appetite goes up, and it all tastes very good.
Meantime, outside, the Potomac Eagle's headlight sends a shaft of light into the wooded darkness. The white siding of a hunting club looms like a ghost up ahead. Deer, startled while drinking in the South Branch, jump ahead of the locomotive and then back to the safety of the woods above. Passenger train lumbers through the night. Sounds of its horn and clanking cars reflect off the distant hills. When daylight returns to the hills around the tracks, a different man-made sound echoes down the valley. A tour guide, whose customers soon will board the train, serenades his visitors at the Indian Mound Cemetery on the outskirts of Romney. Here, you can begin to appreciate the history of the Potomac Eagle's hometown, a heritage becoming better known as more tourists come to ride the train. There are unmarked graves here of Native Americans who first arrived perhaps 1,900 years ago. European settlers arrived in the 1700s. Old headstones reveal the area's link to the Revolutionary War and to the Civil War, in which Romney had something of a revolving door. Union and Confederate forces swapped control of this town no less than 56 times.
But there was no major battles here. There was no Gettysburg or Manassas-like battle. It was a matter of lots of times of one side seeing the other side coming and leaving. And one day, Romney actually changed hands 3 times in one day.
High on an adjacent mountaintop, You still can see the remains of earthworks, where Union troops dug trenches from which they and their cannon could control the strategic valley and its railroad below. There were no trees here at that time. The soldiers cleared them to have an open view of all approaching troops to the Romney area. In the town itself, the house still stands where Confederate General Stonewall Jackson put his local headquarters. The Davis History House holds precious artifacts from the war.
We have Civil War guns, other Civil War memorabilia that was used, like powder flask, pictures, cannonballs, a book that tells some of the things. We have a uniform, the top of a uniform that was used before the war. It is blue because it was Virginia. The buttons have Virginia on them. He was a Confederate, though, and during the war he wore gray.
The Potomac Eagle's home celebrates culture and education as well as military history.
I think it's a seat of our culture in our state. Our literary society, founded in 1819, this is the first library in West Virginia, the largest library west of the Blue Ridge Mountains, and it started the educational system in our state.
And yet, more modern history in the form of the Coca-Cola Museum draws more attention than the others, with its rare outdoor advertisements, bottlers' uniform, old vending machines, and antique Coke-shaped radio. But the Potomac Eagle is now the main draw, and especially its namesake, the American or bald eagle. The eagle in the center of our picture sat on a branch for about a minute before swooping off downriver, gliding a few feet above the treetops as its 4-foot wingspan cast shadows on the leaves. To get the best look at the eagles and the unspoiled beauty of this area, many passengers ride in the open gondola car. Here they get a panoramic view of the trough, the narrowest cut through the valley where the cliffs are steep, the view breathtaking, and the enthusiasm contagious.
I want to see eagles. My mother and son and I love eagles, and I just wanted to see an eagle in the wild so very much.
Oh, I love to be out where you can see everything. I don't like to be confined.
You worried about the rain and the cold and the wind?
No, I love it. Really, I don't mind that. I think if it rained, it'd be fun.
Find the eagles, Peg. She's a bird dog, so I figured she would find the eagles.
Has she found one yet?
Not a single one. I think she's on vacation and she won't work.
What's it been like out here for you?
Oh, this is great. This is great. I didn't realize they had this open car. This really makes it for me.
Autumn drifts into the gondola car like a flurry of giant snowflakes, and passengers reach for a mid-air catch. One passenger had mixed feelings about the beauty around her.
Well, it's been rather an emotional time for me because my husband just passed away and I've always wanted to make this trip. And it's just been sort of a sad trip for me too, as well as a joyful one.
Whether your experience is poignant or simply diverting, the Potomac Eagle draws most of its magic from the splendor that surrounds it. From one end of the run to the other, you ride through a rural wonderland of pastures, forests, and mountains that so far have escaped most of the distracting marks of civilization. An observer from a mountaintop miles away can leisurely observe your passage back in time as the whistle echoes across the fertile land below and it becomes obvious why the Eagles call this home. It seems ironic that a rather noisy piece of man-made machinery seems to fit so well with the natural surroundings. Perhaps we accept them as one because they both remind us of a simpler, slower past that we long for. So we willingly combine them in our hearts and accept the contrast. From spring through fall, the Potomac Eagle takes you on an unforgettable journey. Gently, soothingly, it takes you out across the flat land, across and along the south branch of the Potomac, through the trough, by the eagle's nests, to Sycamore Bridge and back, taking you where it's harder to go these days, leaving you not quite the same person you once were.